Thank you all for joining us on a good webinar we've got for you today called How to Keep a Home Inspection from Killing the Deal. Everybody's anxious to hear that secret story. So I think we've got some good insight for you. So with us today is, I'm Tim Clark. I'm the Regional Vice President for BPG Inspections. And so thank you all for joining us. Al Gant is with us. Al's our market leader for state of Wisconsin. Al just said hi. And also our sponsor today for this is Benjamin DeWitt. Ben is with Fidelity National Title. So why don't you say hi to the group, Ben, and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. This is going to be a great webinar. I've seen a couple of them already, and they do a great job. They also do a great job in their business of inspections. So BPG Inspections, I definitely recommend Al and Tim and his company. But Fidelity National Title, I cover the state of Wisconsin, and some of our locations include Madison, Sun Prairie, Stoughton, Janesville, Brookfield, West Bend. We do in-office closings, curbside, in-home, and we do remote online notary closings as well. We cover the whole state of Wisconsin, and be happy to help you with any of your deals. But I'm not going to talk about myself or our company, because this is all about how to not kill a deal with the inspection. And tune in. They do a great job. So thanks, guys.
Good. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to say, Al, in terms of a greeting?
Yes, BPG Inspections, we're here to serve you and your client, and we're covering all of southern Wisconsin now. So we go where you go. And as we mentioned earlier, we were talking earlier about certain areas, we're actually using computer reports. So
good. We'll show you a good copy of those reports in a minute. Okay, so here's a quick overview of the webinar that we're going to present today, how to keep a home inspection from killing the deal. And this is a accumulation of things that I found and Al's found. We've both been doing inspections and still are for many years, and probably have many years to go still, as young as we are. But you'll see we've put together this webinar to share with you some of the things that we've noticed over the years about how to keep these deals from coming apart. I know everyone works very hard showing homes, driving people around, meeting people at houses, organizing schedules, buyers, sellers schedules. Finally, you get a contract on a deal, you negotiate the price, and now comes this due diligence period, which if you're not careful can derail all that work. Sometimes it is the wrong house. Sometimes it's a bad house. Sometimes things just come apart over emotions or when it shouldn't have come apart. And those are the ones we want to try and help you with today and share with you some of the things we've learned over the years. So it's kind of 7 points here right at the beginning. We'll elaborate on these as we go along. The first one is managing emotions. Emotions are what kills your deal most of the time. We'll give you some tips on how to manage those. Prepare the house for the inspection. That can play a part. Setting expectations of the inspection. Preparing your buyers. Dealing with the report. Selecting the right inspection company, the right inspector, and the right company. And then this last bullet is real important, is keeping it all positive and celebrating. The times we found where these alligators can jump up and kill your deal is right at the inspection. And you've got a buyer, maybe this is their dream home. They're really excited about getting their first home, maybe about moving back home, moving to a new city, starting a new job. They've got stars in their eyes. They're excited. And they get to the inspection, and for the first time, Al or Don or someone on our team starts talking maybe about some things that are less than perfect. And those stars begin to get challenged. And if there's enough wrong, if the inspector doesn't conduct himself right, communicate right, watch how they're taking the information in, those stars can disappear. and they can begin to question their decision right at the inspection. So that's the first place someone might derail your deal, or something might derail your deal. The second place is when they're reading the report. Al has done a great job on site, and managed to communicate very well. They took it all in, but now they see 10 things listed out on paper. And this, as they read the first one, they read the second one, they read the third one, this negative momentum builds up. And again, they might question their deal, question this deal. And then finally is negotiating the report. You ask them to fix 4 or 5 things. They come back with, no, we're going to do this, or we won't do anything. And your deal is hanging there, fluttering in the wind. And all the hard work you've put in is also fluttering in the wind. So take a picture of this slide, folks, with your phone, and remember these 3 stress points, you might call them. These are the places where you've got to really be on your toes and on guard. And I'm not suggesting that you manipulate people. I'm suggesting that be aware of these are the places where people's emotions can take over and they can begin to question their deal.
And I'd like to add right here that, it's really important, these emotions that the people have. The moment we meet them at the driveway is to start setting the scope of what we're going to do. And we can, basically see what they're in their eyes and what they're looking at and what they're saying. We can kind of control the way the inspection goes, which is extremely important, because if you can kind of control the emotions, you can also get them to understand what's going on before they get emotional about something. So then, as far as the realtor is concerned, it gets to a situation where it's more of a discussion about what the issue is versus them going too far with that. So creates an opportunity.
So let's talk first about the sellers. So the sellers are excited. They've got a contract on their house. They were afraid they wouldn't be able to sell their house. Number one, maybe nobody will want to buy this. Number two, they didn't know if they would get the price that they wanted. So they've got all that now in place, and we're done with that part. But now reality sets in, and they've got to pack and move. They've got to get the kids in a new school. They most likely have a contract on a new house themselves and have to go through this process as the buyer. So your sellers have a lot on their plate as well. And now here comes the home inspector, who might come in here, nitpick the house in their eyes and ruin this whole thing. They've got this chain of events where they've got to move out on a certain day, get the kids in school, get in the new house, close on their house. And this whole timeline of events has to flow perfectly. And here comes the home inspector who might derail it. So their emotions are on edge as well.
And it's very important that the seller understands and is prepared for the inspection. They want the house to be the same as it was the day that they showed the house, for many reasons, but they don't want to give the impression that they don't care about it now that they have an offer.
Yeah. So a good line is this last bullet here that I popped up, the very last line on this slide that says, remind the seller when they're buying a house, they'll want their inspector to be thorough also. So be aware of that. Now, preparing the house for the inspection. This is a part that many times gets overlooked, but it can play a part because your buyers come to this deal very skeptical. They're afraid they're not getting a good deal on this house. Yeah, they negotiated the price, but maybe they're paying too much. Maybe there's too much wrong. And they're looking at this thing very skeptically, like this little girl is. Okay, so you got the buyers who've got this chain of events taking place. The sellers, and now you got the buyers who are coming in skeptical about everything. So here's how you can help in this situation is, number one, making the attic access accessible. I saw this happen to me last week, and it looked identical to this picture. Al's seen it many times himself. So listing agents, buyer's agents, maybe remind the listing agent, get those attic access open. Otherwise, we've got to come back, or your skeptical buyer is wondering what's going on up there. And they want to know, is there a family of squirrels living up there? Is there a boa restrictor in that attic? Is there sizzling hot smoking wires? They don't know. They want to see. And when they can't, that makes them a little more skeptical or feeds into that skepticism. Breaker panel is another one. When it comes to electricity, your buyers want to know. They're afraid, and rightly so. Electric can burn down their house. So get the equipment out from in front of the electric panel where the inspector can get to it. Al and our team can get in there and take a good look at it and give them peace of mind. Most likely everything's fine with that panel, but they're skeptical and they want to know.
And the thing too is the sellers don't want the inspector moving their stuff. Inspectors don't want to be moving their stuff because we don't want the liability, but at the same point, we want to take care of our clients. So if it's possible, we try to do what we can with good customer service. But like the one here with the breaker panel, how are you going to move a big piece of equipment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. If things aren't accessible, buyers begin to think, what are they hiding? They knew we were coming. Couldn't they have at least cleaned up a few things, opened up these areas for us? So again, they're very skeptical. And the big one there is that last bullet. Do they even want to sell this house? And I've seen that many times. The buyers begin to think, well, do they even want to sell? This whole thing may come apart. And it begins to raise those questions. Kind of like this cartoon of this dinosaur or an alligator hiding under a carpet. The other term for it is a ghost in a closet. So buyers will imagine those things. So help alleviate those. Create situations where they can have full disclosure, they can get into things, see things, and they'll remove that skepticism, because some people, if they're not sure, they tend to back out of the deal. So now on to the inspection. So this is a really important slide here. Set the expectations with the buyers and the sellers. Ask the sellers to leave. It creates an awkward environment when they're there lurking, trying to hear, and sometimes it makes them very full of anxiety and things can happen. But I do realize there's cases where you have maybe an older family, an older couple who just can't leave. And certainly we can deal with that. And we can deal with any situation. It is best that the sellers leave to remove that awkwardness. And a good line for this is, when you become seller, Mr. Seller, when you become a buyer, you're going to want the seller to leave so you can enjoy your time at that home and taking a good look at it. So ask those sellers to leave. Encourage the buyers to attend the inspection. And then if possible, attend the inspection yourself. Buyer's agents, not necessarily listing agents. Listing agents kind of play the same role as the seller, not quite as bad, and you certainly understand the process better than the sellers do. But it's really just best to have the buyer and their agent there. What do you think, Al?
I think the buyer's agent being there is great for the client and even the inspector, because what it does, even if they're not following along, some agents will follow along. Some will literally go sit at the kitchen table to open their computer, but they're there in case that client's got a question about something. You know, is that TV in the bedroom hanging on the wall? Is that staying? Are they going to fix the wall? Or, you know, those type of questions. And what's nice about that for the client is they get those things answered before they leave the inspection. So they're not going home and like, should we call? Should we not? You know, it's better just to have it out of their mind and let them move on.
If you can have a nice, peaceful time there with your inspector, who's a good communicator, does a good, thorough job, yourself as the buyer's agent and the buyers, that will go a long way toward keeping that deal together, because it removes a lot of that skepticism. Okay. So preparing the buyers for the inspection. So remind them that the inspection is about the major items, not necessarily maintenance items. And I know in Wisconsin, there's some very specific guidelines along these purposes. we're there to look at the major things, and really we call them the 5 meat and potatoes: the roof, the structure, the plumbing, the electric, the heating and cooling, the 5 big items. In the course of looking and examining the performance of those systems, we run across maintenance items. We run across code, our professional installation standards items. We run across a whole host of things that end up many times in the report, but the report is really there to focus on those 5 major items that are how they are functioning and significant safety items. Remind them there's no perfect home. Even a brand new home I did last week, the dishwasher didn't work. There was a piece of siding hanging off the back of the house and the sump pump didn't work. Brand new house, never been lived in. There's certainly no perfect home. And remind them also that the inspector will put together a report, very thorough report for their review. Last week at my inspection, the young man, the agents had not done this. The young man's just frantically on his phone typing stuff in. And I said, Randy, I said, you working that hard? He says, oh no, I'm taking notes. And I said, well, you don't have to do that. So I'm gonna give you a very thorough report, pictures, everything here. So that helps it also when they know that it's all gonna be put in writing. So I've seen over the years that you do an inspection for a client, 2 weeks later, that same client and agent shows up at another inspection. I say, what happened? You didn't buy the other one? No, we didn't. There was just too much wrong. Most of the time on that second house that we're inspecting for them, there's just as much wrong. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's not. But sometimes there's more too. So every home is going to have some things wrong.
And I think Kim's correct here. There's such thing as the perfect house. It's setting expectations to what is good for these people and what they are looking for. I've gone through the house and, I'll be honest with people and I'll tell them, well, that's cosmetic. We'll talk to them about what cosmetic means. I'll even flat out tell them, hey, part of the fun about buying a house is make it your own. Well, it's true. When they move in, they're going to make it their own. And what's sitting in that house today is not what's going to be in there the day they move in. So they have to kind of vision it that way too, and kind of expect the report to go that way too.
So things that attack a buyer's emotions. Is the home safe? That's really number one, is they want to make sure they're not going to be hurt. Their kids aren't going to be hurt. Their guests aren't going to be injured in some way by coming to their house. Are there too many maintenance items? They can deal with some things and kind of like some projects, but there can be too many. And remember, they probably don't know how to address those maintenance items. Maybe the shutters need to be painted, the gutters need to be cleaned, the expansion joints need to be sealed, the furnace filter needs to be changed, the air conditioning A coil needs to be sprayed off. And you felt it right there. As I went through that list, it begins to mount up on you, doesn't it? And you're like, how do I do these things? I don't know how to do them. I guess I can YouTube and figure out how to do them. And that's okay. I do the same thing. But when am I going to do them? How much is it going to cost to pay someone to do them? So the overall condition of the home, cost and time to fix, all these things are going through your buyer's mind as they go deal with this home inspection. Is there mold? Lead paint, asbestos, termites, radon, gas leaks, all these things start flowing through their mind for the first time, really, for the first time ever, possibly, especially about this home. So they're dealing with a lot of things. Is sewer going to back up? Does the basement leak? And they don't want any of those things to happen to them, honestly, and no one does.
And I think it's extremely important for an inspector who is seasoned to actually kind of watch the client as we go through the house. And this is why it's so important for them to be there, see what their emotions are. And, if something's getting to be a bigger deal, to step back a minute and let's talk more about it. And let's do a little education, get you to where you need to be. So you know a little bit more and you can have a discussion with the realtor about really what the issue is and how to get past it versus a situation where you're going to freak out and everything blows up, which is not going to be good for anybody.
So here's the difference between actually reading something and seeing it. So here's what we actually found. The report said there's 2 double lugged breakers at the top left corner, top left area of the main circuit panel. If the buyer's not there to see it, this is what they imagine. Okay, a spaghetti of smoking, sparking, unprofessional wiring that's going to burn down and kill them and their family in the middle of the night. So they will assume the worst. They'll assume the worst situation if they don't understand properly. So if they're there, Al can show it to them, Don can show it to them. That makes a huge difference.
You know, and part of the inspection too is us looking out for that client too, because you show them those electrical panels. I've been in front of electrical panels and explained something like that to somebody, and the first thing they do, they're really comfortable with you. They're understanding what's going on. They start sticking their finger in the panel.
Yeah.
You stop that real quick. You don't want them getting hurt either.
So here's what the buyer doesn't want to happen. Remember, your buyers are very skeptical. This is what they don't want to happen, right? The very first time they've just moved in their new home and it rains hard and here they are. All right, she's watching, trying to get a roofer on the phone. The little girl's trying to play in the water and dad's down there trying to catch it all. So they just don't want anything like that. They're afraid it's going to happen. They're afraid when we start talking about knob and tube wiring or aluminum wiring, that this is going to happen, that in the middle of the night, the extension cord is going to start sparking, smoking, flaming, and burn the house down. Here's the other thing they imagine. We talk about foundation problems. They think that the back end of the whole house is going to fall off and it's going to be left teetering there in the air. So your buyers assume the worst is going to happen when we talk about these things. If they can't see it, if you don't have a good inspector who explains it properly, this is what begins to go through their mind. People immediately assume the worst. Okay, it's going to kill their whole family, the roof's going to leak. So education, though, removes that fear. So when you have a buyer, a client, who is really getting a lot of anxiety, and that's very normal, very natural for that to happen. I do myself. Education will remove that. And that's where your good home inspection company, your good home inspection team really earns their money, is helping them understand these things. It's not the home inspector's job to just blow out a whole bunch of scary stuff and walk away and leave it to you and the buyers to agonize over. Your inspector should be there to help you with that. And education removes that fear. So knowledge is really key. So an inspector has the job of helping their clients understand the magnitude of the deficiency. Real important. It's not their job. It's not our job to scare a client back into an apartment, and we will. I mean, I'm not saying we will, BPG. I'm saying inspectors can do that. And I'm going to show you in a minute how we train specifically to not do that. But those buyers, they'll get scared if it's not properly communicated. They'll get out of that deal, get out of the process, and live in an apartment for another 5 years. So that's definitely not helping them or anyone for that to happen.
It's controlling emotions and educating. And, you know, it's honestly, we're going through this thing with them. Every client and every person, their level of what they need and want are completely different. And it's just picking up the clues. I mean, some people don't want to be educated. They know everything. Some people want to know everything. So it's picking up the clues, trying to figure out where they need to be and doing your job to get them where, you know, you need them.
Yep. So educate. So monitoring and controlling the emotions is the job of the inspector. I don't know for sure, obviously, but I think BPG is probably the only inspection company that trains to what we're about to talk about. We train our inspectors to monitor the emotions of the buyer. And Al alluded to this a little bit earlier. So at the beginning of the inspection, they're all smiles, full of excitement. They're buying their dream home. It's their first house. They're excited as could be to be able to move in there and have a place of their own. But as the inspector begins to describe the home to them, maybe some things aren't that positive, their countenance changes. It drops, and the list grew too long, and it's overload, and they get nervous and full of anxiety, And right there at the inspection, they go off in the corner and begin to question if they should buy this house, if they made the right decision or not. A good inspector, and honestly, a good realtor will spot this and will address it right there. It's kind of a crude saying, but when something smells funky, move to it right away, okay, and address it. And I think that really applies in this case, is when you see this situation, address it. Emily, Derek, what's going on? Okay, what happened to those pretty smiles? What's the matter? And Emily might say, well, you know what, Al, that reverse polarity outlet, I'm afraid the house is going to, all the wiring is bad. And then Al can address that and get rid of that with accurate information.
It's nothing worse when it comes to an inspection and you washing the client and you can't figure out what their problem is. You ask them, whatever the case may be. The education, if you get down to what the problem is and you can educate them, it gets by this really quick and it gets them more confidence into what they're going to do. We can't change someone's mind in the sense, well, if this house is definitely not wrong for them, maybe they need to move on. But most of the time it's something very simple that they just need to have a little more clarity to.
So you've made it through the inspection. Well, back up. You've prepared the sellers, you've prepared the buyer, you've had the inspection. Now you're going to deal with the report. So dealing with the report is a little tricky, but here's what I've noticed over the years, that sellers will almost always fix things that don't work. For example, a defective dishwasher, a furnace that won't come on, a roof that's leaking, a toilet that won't flush. Those are easy negotiations. A seller, I don't know of any seller that would say, well, you know, the roof's leaking, tough luck, fix it. The day after closing, you come over and do whatever you want. That probably is not going to happen. I'm not saying there's not contrary sellers who might say that, but it's probably not going to happen. So when you're dealing with the report, try to stick to those things that are going to affect your life the day you move in there. That's a good filter. If I move in November 25th and the furnace doesn't work, that's not reasonable. Or if there's 22 blown off shingles on the roof, that's not reasonable. If the master toilet won't flush, that's not reasonable. So those things, that's a good filter for you to deal with. Those things that will immediately affect my client's life the day they move into this house. Cleaning the gutters, they can get to that, okay? Sealing the asphalt, they can get to that. So if you'll focus on that, it'll help you deal with the report much better. Safety items is another thing. Obviously, safety items need to be fixed. Try to avoid negotiation about maintenance items or things that might fail in the future. The yard needs to be raked, or the chimney, the inspector said the chimney is going to need to be cleaned in 3 years. Well, sellers are just going to be irritated with those things. And now you're at risk. Preparing the response to the sellers. These next 3 slides are really powerful little slides. Maybe you've heard this, possibly have, and so this would just be a refresher. But this is an example of one of our reports. First of all, we try to segment the information into 2 categories. One is action items, or we call it the red list. See, it has a red banner. The other is consideration items. We call the blue list, or it has a blue banner. Those things in the action items are those things that don't work or are significant safety items. Things that don't work, are broken, defective, deficient in some way. So we help you a lot by segmenting them. If you'll focus really on those action items, those are probably the things that are going to affect their life the day they move in there. So you take our report and you're going to make 3 passes through this red list. The first time you're going to go through it with your buyers, and you're just going to take a yellow marker and just highlight the things that are concerning to them, concerning, okay? You notice there's a bathtub that has a small leak. Number 3, the fireplace did not work. Number 4, neither sink faucet turns. in the master bathroom. Number 5, the master bathroom, the left sink drains slowly. And number 6, the master bathtub, whirlpool tub, some of the jets aren't working. So 5 things there, 6 items on the list, 5 things that are concerning to them. Now
I want to throw in here real quick before we get running on this. Wisconsin with the defect thing that they're talking about, just translating our report to that. Action items would be considered a defect, which would be, health and safety, something that's not working. Considerations really are, oh, by the way, this is a maintenance thing type of thing.
Yep.
So I keep that in mind too.
Yeah, we've tried to gear our report to those Wisconsin requirements, okay, to help you with that. So your second pass through it, this time you're going to take a red marker and you're going to underline those things that are concerning and also important to them. Notice in this case, the number 5 dropped off, that the left sink drains slowly. So maybe the young man says, you know what, Uncle Bill, he's a plumber. I think he'd take care of that for me, no problem. And so let's drop that one off the list. Now you're down to just 4 things, okay? Let's make one more pass through it and see if we can't narrow it down any farther. This time we're going to circle those things that are really important and we want the seller to fix or to negotiate in some way. So in this case, number 1 dropped off, so it has a small leak. Maybe he says, well, Uncle Bill, he's plumber. He can fix that slow drain and he can fix this leak at the same time. And you're just left with these 3 things to negotiate. Fireplace that doesn't work, very reasonable request. Neither master bathroom sink faucet will turn, very reasonable request. Some of the jets in the whirlpool tub are not working. That one's a little bit on the borderline, but that's probably reality too, okay? Also, so you can see if you use this highlighter, red line, circle method, I think you can help narrow that down. And I know a lot of times you're doing this remotely over the phone or via Zoom. It makes it a little harder. Now, if you get into problems, many times in this stage right here, you'll get into a situation where you're not quite sure the magnitude of the deficiency. When that happens, involve your inspector. So a good inspector is a walking bank of accurate knowledge. Use them if your client begins to get cold feet. I have it happen all the time. They'll call and they'll say, Al or Tim or Don, no, our buyers are really upset or don't know what to do about that slow drain in the master bathroom or the fireplace that doesn't work. And we can give them more information and help them digest that. We can help them keep it all in perspective. The home inspector is one of the most trusted people in the whole real estate transaction, one of the most trusted people. So involve them. If the inspector's done a good job, then they will trust what he says. And your inspector will help your clients deal with the emotions that's running through them and help them make non-emotional decisions.
And we're happy to take the phone calls and to explain things and do whatever we need to do to help your client through these things too. Like Tim says, we do this all the time.
Sometimes though, if it's the wrong house, we're not going to try and talk them into the wrong house. If it's just it might be a good house for an investor, or it might be a good house for a young couple, but it's just not the right house for this couple. And at that point, you have to respect that decision. And we don't try to talk them into it. We just help them understand and with good, accurate information. So selecting the right inspector and the right inspection company. So choosing the right inspector. So what really matters when you go to choose the inspector is their knowledge. In the home inspection business, the inspector is our product. More specifically, it's their knowledge that's our product. And a good personality, thorough knowledge about how a home works, and good communication skills are all wrapped up in what we call the inspector's demeanor. And people naturally gauge that and understand it. So that's how you choose the right inspector. I tell people, find the guy like Al, like Don, our team, that's very busy and has been doing it a long time. That means really that the realtors like him, because you all will filter us out if we can't do these things that are on the screen right now very well. You'll filter, you'll say, no, don't use that guy. Use Al over at BPG or whatever the case is. So the information from your inspector, it has to be accurate. They really shouldn't be putting out. When I first started 27 years ago, my mentor said, Tim, you'll never get in trouble in this business if you don't say anything that you're not absolutely sure of. So I've always tried to abide by that and integrate it throughout BPG is don't say anything, guys, that you're not absolutely sure of. Inspection company, it must be responsive. They should answer their phone or call you back quickly. Available for inspections with some extended hours, nights, weekends. Have an easy process for scheduling. Ready to help with extended advice long after the inspection. Have an adequate amount of liability and E&O insurance, not just the bare minimum. This is something I see that realtors don't do. Honestly, no offense, but you don't do this very well. Is you like the inspector, but you don't know if he has liability insurance. You don't know if it's just more than him and his truck and a scheduling book. So do a little bit of investigation about your home inspection companies and make sure that they're more than just the bare minimum, that they're going to answer their phone and be there in the long run.
And just to touch on the liability thing, in Wisconsin, home inspectors don't have to have a liability and no insurance. There's no requirement of any kind.
Yeah, there you go. So even more important to investigate your inspection company a little bit. I'm going to show you what ours is in a minute. So another, which is kind of a pet peeve of mine, is the home inspection report should be easy to read and delivered in a timely manner. I hate these reports that you can't understand, you can't figure out what he's talking about. It's delivered 6 days after the inspection in the middle of the night. It's got to be easy to use. And you've seen our report. We've really spent time on making our report easy to use and understand, because I know many times it's the realtor who really deals with the home inspection report. You go through there meticulously, making sure you don't miss anything for your clients. A company with poor client service, who doesn't answer their phone, who's late, who doesn't show up, scheduling mistakes, can't remember to come back and pick up the radon test, whatever, they're just an irritation and they're going to put everybody on edge. So here's some things about BPG. So we believe we are the company that can do all the above. A big one today is our inspectors. All of our inspectors are background checked. We background check them when we hire them, and we hire them for their demeanor, their communication, their knowledge. And we're also fully certified, fully licensed where required. We follow COVID procedures. We choose our inspectors for their communication ability and their technical competence. They can know everything there is about a house, but if they can't communicate it, or vice versa, they may be the most charming guy, charismatic, friendly, fun to be around, but they don't know anything, okay? And so they've got to have both. So BPG's fully insured to protect your transactions. We have a $10 million E&O insurance policy that extends to the referring realtor. All our inspections are backed by a 90-day major component guarantee. It's not a bumper to bumper, no questions asked, everything covered immediately guarantee. There's fine print to it, there's stipulations to it, there's some guidelines to it, but it is some coverage, and it's mainly there for your client moves in, they live there for 2 weeks, and suddenly the furnace quits working, or the plumbing springs a bit. So those are the things, it's 90 days from the day of the inspection. Those are the type of things it's there for, is that real unexpected event that just occurs. We have a lifetime of consulting on your property. You can call us anytime. We put our cell phone numbers on our business card, not just our office number. You can call us anytime. We also have a superior service guarantee. If your client's not happy and we can't make them happy, we'll refund their fee. We'll do that. I had to do it yesterday. And then finally, one of the last points here is we want you to celebrate. So keep the process positive. Buying a home, it's a great decision. It's hard to make a bad decision when you're buying a home. Even if the home needs maintenance, it's better than renting for another 5 years at $750 a month. If you can rent a house for $750 a month, that would be $45,000 over 5 years. And some of these buyers will do it. They'll back out and they'll go back to an apartment for and it's 5 years before they get back in the game. What if the rent was $1,500 a month? We're talking $90,000. So that, and they walked away from the deal because of a $2,000 or $3,000 item, or maybe even a GFCI outlet. So don't keep those numbers in perspective. Celebrate, keep the process positive, and this is, they're buying their home. This is where they're going to come home, have all their holidays, graduations, birthdays, all of life events are going to occur here. It's a great thing that they're doing financially and personally. Don't let them lose sight of that, because they will. Today, people are detailed, they're computer driven, and they'll dig their heels in over a $100 item. I'm not buying this house if that seller won't fix that. Keep it positive. And this is probably the biggest point of the whole webinar, is the more positive you can keep it, joke around a little bit, because there's enough dragging them down. Pull them up a little bit, and you'll have more success for themselves and for yourself. Don't forget to call us if you need us. We're always here for you. Here's how you schedule an inspection with us. So you can go to 1-800-285-3001, or if you want to talk to a person, we have a very friendly call center. We don't outsource it. They're right here in the good old USA, and they're very friendly, they're efficient, and they're going to be grateful for you calling them, okay? If you want to use the technology, you can go right here to where my mouse is, it says schedule an inspection, click on that. You'll be able to pick your inspector's day and time that you want the inspection. You'll be able to see their schedule, select the add-on services you want, and immediately you and your client will get email confirmations. So our scheduling system works very well. We have very few scheduling mix-ups. So either one of those places to order an inspection. Here's our team. So you can see Al there at the top, his cell phone number, Don and Bob Stemo, who we're adding in Milwaukee. So you can call 1-800, there's the 1-800 number, or you can call, there's their cell phone numbers. Obviously, it's a little better if you call the 1-800 number, then get it on the order. Al's probably out doing an inspection. Talk about the services that we offer, Al.
Well, here in Wisconsin, we do a number of things. We do residential and commercial inspections. So in commercial could be almost anything. We do pre-listing inspections, which, you know, depending on what your market is and what you have going on, may be a big thing for you. Re-inspections, that's another thing that can come up. Radon test. Wisconsin, it's a test, it's not an inspection. So you have to write this up in your document when you offer to buy if you're gonna do a radon test. So have that discussion with your client before you make the offer. If they are concerned about radon, you want to write that into the agreement so we can do a radon test. If you don't put that in the offer, then you can't test for it, not till after the inspection anyways, or after the deal's closed. And then termite, we are in Wisconsin, let's be honest, there isn't a lot of termites up here, but the VA does require it. We have a VA loan. So we do termite inspections for that. We're very reasonable. Inspection wise, if we do it during an inspection, it's $95. If we have to go out to the house on an individual trip, it's $150. So that's some of the things we do for you. And, you know, we're always out there for you on other things too. So if you got questions about anything, you know, feel free. You know, oftentimes we'll take calls from different realtors, just questions about different things. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be about a specific inspection. Whatever we need to do to help you out, we're going to do it.
We're gonna, if you have If you have any questions, if you'd like to chat them to us, we'll be glad to answer those questions. We're not in a hurry to get off, but I know you may be. So I'll give you, before we have Benjamin talk, if you have any questions, go ahead and chat those to us. Benjamin, thank you for sponsoring this webinar.
Thank you for doing the webinar. You guys do a great job. I've seen a few of them, and you've added some nice things to each one, and very, very to the point and thorough. One thing I would add, if something does come up in an inspection where the seller is going to be required to do some construction or get something installed, basically anything that's going to create an invoice, the realtors will be responsible for getting us those invoices. And then we may have to have a lien waiver signed by the construction company or the party. That's something that to think about as a realtor, as you obviously want to see that the job gets done for your buyer. So get those invoices. Also, thank you for joining. Please consider us as a closing company. Again, locations in Madison, Sun Prairie, Stoughton, Janesville, Brookfield, and West Bend. We can do any type of closing that's preferred by the customer, and we don't add additional fees because we have to do things remotely. My information's on there, and many of you that are on there already know me. So thanks and have a great day.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So thank you all, and it's time for questions. So Ryan, I know you raised your hand. I'm not the best on this. I tried to unmute you so you can chat your question to us, or go ahead and speak, and I think we'll be able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So what would you say to a buyer that if you're showing them the house, we're down in the basement, they look up and they see knob and tube wiring, and maybe the switches are old. What would you tell a realtor to say to a client who is just getting real, they're already sketchy about the basement, but now they've seen the electrical, they really like the house seems to be in good condition. What would you coach a realtor, a buyer's agent like myself, to say to that buyer?
That's good. Go ahead, Al.
Oftentimes when I'm in a situation like that where I, get in a basement and I'm seeing that buyer's getting sketchy over some knob and tube, I will just say, hey, wait a minute here before we talk about what it is. Let's talk about what the result's going to be if that is the case. And I'll back them up a little bit, and we'll do a little education. Then we'll get into it a little bit, and we'll kind of go that direction, because it's easier for them to understand it before they get freaked out and hear the word, knob and tube or asbestos or mold. So sometimes you have to do that just to keep everything at a more level field, I guess.
Yeah, because I have knob and tube wiring in my house. My house was built in 1890, and our house is nice, and it's got a mix between updated Romex and some knob and tube that they just didn't get access to, whether it was up through the walls or in the attic. And so I try to do my best to help them and educate them, but I guess from a perspective of an inspector, how to, what would you tell the realtor to say? Because I'm not an inspector. So, but yeah, that makes sense.
I think like Al said, I think it's mostly an insurance concern. Back around the 1900, the turn of the 20th century is when we first started wiring homes indoors for electricity. And knob and tube was the very first, right there with Tesla, and when all that was Edison, all that was going on.
Wow.
And knob and tube was the very first style of wiring used for indoor residential wiring. So it's old, okay, just like in your house. And so insurance companies know that, and they like to see it removed. It will vary by insurance company. It will vary by region across the United States. For the most part, if it's accessible in the basement or in the attic, it's nice to have it removed. If it's buried in the walls, it's probably in good shape, and you can leave it alone. I don't know of anyone who requires it all to be removed.
Okay. I did talk to an electrician who actually came over and looked at our house, and he said the exact same thing you just did. He
Good.
said that, we're not, he goes, I don't know of any project where all of it has been removed. They'll take the updates to a certain point and put a junction box in and splice. But again, as a realtor, I don't feel comfortable telling my buyers that. I just want to be able to help them navigate through that emotion. And I appreciate that part of the webinar, because I do find that buyers have a lot of emotions when they're walking through, especially older houses.
You're correct. And Kathy Schultz just had a question regarding knob and tube and wanted to know if it was a fire hazard. And it's a good question relating to what we're talking about here. Can it be? It can be, yeah. But in a wall, typically it's not going to be unless you're adding insulation. If it's in an attic that has no insulation and it's exposed and the wiring's chewed up or something, it really comes down to what you see and what the discussion goes from. So sometimes you really have to see the whole thing before you can really say the real answer. But when it comes to, is it a fire hazard? It's not a straightforward answer. Insurance companies may look at it just as a flat out answer, because they still, well, it's knob and tube, but it's not the case. Knob and tube isn't necessarily bad by itself. That kind of makes sense.
Good. What else? We like these questions. I did launch the polling, so if you haven't answered your poll, go ahead and if you would give us some feedback, we appreciate the feedback.
So another question I have is about utilities, sorry, not utilities. What am I saying? Like the furnace. Mechanicals. Everybody asks, so how old's the furnace? And if we don't have the date written on the water heater with magic marker, which I'm glad that they're doing now, we're kind of looking around for dates. Number one, I guess the question is, why is that, do you think, so important to a consumer? And then how do we find the date on a furnace?
Depends what kind of furnace it is. Typically you can find it either on the serial number, the ANSI number, or on some of the parts. Age usually is pretty hard to hide.
Sure.
Managing emotions. I had a client last week and we were looking at a water heater, and the water heater was 3 years old. And they looked at their realtor and they, well, that's 3 years we're not getting back. So you get all kinds of clients. The motion can be whatever,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a head scratcher. But I totally understand what you're saying.
I think one of the reasons, Ryan, is we talk about the age of the furnace, or air conditioner, water heater, roof. Those are really your big age items. Is you're trying to protect your client. If it's a 20-year-old furnace, it's probably going to fail. It's in the fourth quarter of its life, or if not overtime, to use a football analogy. So we're trying to protect them and help them to anticipate that. I do realize that it creates issues when you have a buyer who says, oh, the furnace, it worked, but it's 20 years old. We're going to have to shell out, $3,000 next year for a furnace. And that can be an issue. I don't quite know how to do both. A lot of agents pull in, that's when they pull in a home warranty and maybe give them some peace of mind with that. Although read those home warranties and make sure they don't have age exclusions.
Sure.
So,
I've got, my coworker Shelly is here with me, so she's got a question.
okay.
When does an older roof that doesn't leak be considered a defect? What are you looking at a roof, an older roof?
It depends what kind of roof, number one. Depends on wear and tear. Could be also an issue with when you wear and tear, what's happened. Is there hail damage? Is there moss on the roof? All those kind of things go with it too. So it's not a straightforward answer, but you usually can tell. A newer shingle, I actually had to tell people one time where the roof was less than a year old that the roof was shot, and it was all because of installer error. I mean, they literally wrecked every shingle when they were putting the roof on. Does that normally happen? No, that's pretty extreme. But that being said, generally speaking, most roofs, you know, you're gonna get 20, 25 years out of them if everything goes perfectly.
Hmm.
Generally,
So when does it become a defect?
when there's something wrong, and here's the thing. A lot of times with roofs, we go up on a roof, we look at it and it's mid-age, but it may need someone to go up there and fix a tab. You know,
Right.
fixing a tab is maintenance. That's going up there with a couple shingles and putting a new tab in. I mean, that's not replacing a roof.
Yeah,
So,
right.
I think, you know, to maybe be as specific as we can on your question is if it's totally worn out, let's say it's, you know, 23 years old, there's a leak, there's an active leak, or there's evidence that it has been leaking and the seller's been fixing it. I don't think it's unreasonable to say, well, you know, it's at the end of its life. It's in overtime. And my buyer's going to have to get up from the closing table and immediately start thinking about a new roof, which is $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 possibly. To my mind, that's a defect. I mean, that's a real negotiating item. So that's how I look at it, is what do I have to do when I immediately get up from the closing table? And if it's been leaking, I'd call it defective. You know, if it's old and leaking, you need a new roof. Okay. And the other thing, Ryan, is what would a roofer say if a roofer came out? So you get these 20-year-old roofs, and they leak 6 months after your buyer moves in, and they call a roofer, and the roofer says, oh, this is at the end of its life. We need to put on a new roof. And so now your buyer has to deal with that. So it's not a black and white like a drippy faucet or a toilet that's leaking out on the floor, but it can be close based upon the age and what's going on with it. Hopefully that helps some.
Yeah, no, that was great. Sure.
What else? Good stuff. You guys are a great group.
I have, I thought I had it.
You got a lot.
List, if you would, the 5 things again.
Okay, roof, structure, plumbing, electric, heating and cooling.
Okay.
The group heating and cooling together.
What would you say to a realtor how they should respond? How should I respond if I go into a basement with my buyers and they see okay, so 2 scenarios: a crack in the foundation and with no signs of leaking, because obviously if we see signs of leaking, then we're going to say, well, that's a problem. Or a crack that has been obviously repaired. So if the buyer looks at that, and I'm sure you've had that happen before with buyers, what would you say to the realtor on the showing how they should respond to that being obviously a structural issue?
well, with the crack that's been repaired, obviously, if you can see it's been injected into with epoxy, most likely it's professional. So knowing the companies that are doing it and the warranties they're offering, asking the seller for documentation saying that there's a home warranty regarding that crack is very reasonable. And quite honestly, if it's done right, it's probably stronger than the concrete itself.
Right. Okay.
But as far as cracks really, it depends. We're in Wisconsin. We got 2 kinds of concrete, the kind that cracks and the kind that will crack. There really is no other concrete here. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
A vertical crack with no moisture that's very small is expected.
Gotcha.
It's not going to crash your home. It's expected.
Gotcha. That's a good way to put that.
If you got a horizontal crack and you have, the cracks offset where there's movement and stuff, we have some discussions to have, but even with that, I haven't seen a house yet that can't be fixed. The question is how far they want to go.
So
Okay.
Ryan, I'll give you my little story on those vertical cracks. So it really depends on the direction of the crack. Vertical crack is benign. It's called a vertical shrinkage crack. Is that concrete, when it comes out of the truck, it's got water in it. And over the years, it dehydrates. And when it dehydrates, it shrinks. And when it shrinks, it'll pull itself apart vertically. Thus a vertical shrinkage crack. Those are not structural problems, but they can leak water. So you call a foundation company, they come out and they seal it up with epoxy injection. That's where it's got those, straws sticking in it, and it kind of looks like Frankenstein's neck, right?
Yeah, I had one of those growing up in our house, and we
Yeah.
used to, yeah.
So here comes a young couple. They see it, they view the home, they get back in their car. He says, "What did you think about this one, honey?" She says, "Well, I like the house, but it's got that bad foundation crack in the basement." When all it was a sealed, epoxy sealed vertical shrinkage crack, and which is actually a plus. Those are actually, waterproofing, not foundation corrections. They're waterproofing repairs, not foundation repairs. And there's generally a warranty that goes along with it that if it leaks more, they'll come out and inject more epoxy into it or polyurethane.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you can use that. If they're vertical, it's really kind of a plus. If it's diagonal, get a little scared, get a little nervous. And you can text us pictures of those things. I had it just over the weekend. An agent on his daughter's house texts me this picture and says, "Tim, can we take out this load-bearing wall?" So with technology today, text this stuff, and we'll be happy. I like it when people do it. We learn from it, seeing different experiences. So involve your inspector, involve Al and Don and others.
And we're happy to answer those questions. And quite honestly, if you do stump us, we have other people across the country that we can lean on too, because I like to say I've seen a lot, but as soon as I say I've seen a lot, I walk into a house and like you are mentioned here, I just kind of look at something and I'm like, whoa, in the back of my head before I have to think before I even say anything, just what I'm looking at. It's, people are amazing sometimes what they do. So it's fun to do this job.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else? Good. Okay, Ryan, if you want to call Al or call me, I'll be glad to help you. You call us at any time, okay?
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you very
There's
much.
the cell phone numbers right there. We'll be glad to help you. Benjamin, help you on your title work and get you squared away. All right, everybody. Al, anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, thank you everybody for being on, and appreciate, and anything I can do, feel free to give me a call.
Thank you all.
Good group. Thank you all. You have a great day. Thank you for your business, and thank you for your business in the future. So have a great day.
Thank you.
So what was the final answer on the age of the furnace?